And there we are. And here's the fun. I have a book at the publisher now that I expect to be out within a couple of months. And that is the cover concept. Goodbye Sounds Like. And I'm going to read one of the short poems from there. This will be my third book published with Cyberwit, because they've been so easy to work with. They take my cover suggestions and make corrections and give me a great deal of author control. So I like that. Anyway, this short poem is called Somewhere in the Pause. Somewhere in the pause, there is meaning, unspoken, of course, leading me to an uneasy anticipation of what is to come, longed for pleasure or dreaded pain again. The button is released and the train continues, though down a different track. I am certain of that much, leaving me at the station unresolved and unsure whether I have been teased by a silent invitation or spared an elegant execution. That is my poem from Goodbye Sounds Like, which should be out very shortly. And so, Lorraine, if you will unmute, I think that everyone can see the chat. You have the cover of Lorraine's book there. And Lorraine, you have 5 minutes to tell us about your book and read a poem.
Okay. This is my third book with Dancing Girl Press. It's called In the Jaguar Valley. It's a collection of poems I've written over the years in my visits to Quito, Ecuador. According to indigenous tradition, the valley is in the shape of a jaguar that's lying down. And areas that are like that were considered sacred, and they would build major cities there. So the one I'm going to read from it happens to be in a June visit. June is a time when there's many celebrations that are coming up, including Inti Raymi and the celebrations of San Antonio, which is next Tuesday, and San Juan, which is at the end of the month. This is called An Plaza San Francisco. I bathe in the full moon's silver light, watching her dance with the clouds. Suddenly, fireworks light the sky in red and golden showers, whistling spirals of sparks weaving through growing thunderheads of gunpowder. And the air clears to reveal the moon once more. In this sacred time of the year, San Antonio, solstice, Inti Raymi, San Juan, in this holy valley surrounded by snowy volcanoes filled with ancient memories.
Excellent, thank you. And I forgot to do this myself, which I will correct shortly. Would you please put a link in the chat to where we can purchase your book? I will include that link when I put up the YouTube video.
Yes, it'll be coming in a second.
No problem. Next up is Laurie Kuntz.
Hi, everyone, and thanks again for coordinating this, Jim. And my book this month is, I was on last month, so this month is Talking Me Off the Roof by Kelsay Books. And the title of this book comes from a song by Jason Isbell called If We Were Vampires. And there's a line, the way you talk me off the roof, and I kind of liked it and wrote a poem about it, which I read last time. And anyway, this is the book. And the poem I'm going to read today is called Why I Did Not Go to Your Poetry Reading, which I think is kind of ironic to read this at a poetry reading. So, why I did not go to your poetry reading. For days now, he's been asking me to help till the soil so we could plant wildflowers over that gray patch of decomposing weeds. The same time as your poetry reading that I wanted to attend, but I didn't. I was helping my husband plant wildflowers with names like Elysium, Larkspur, and Zinnia, names you would have in your poems. You're a good poet. You share everyday epiphanies. Yes, poetry saves us, and I hate to not attend. But it's not like I'm missing my son's second grade piano recital or chickening out at the blood drive for earthquake victims. You are just another poet, inspiring, spouting wisdom and truth. But won't those wildflowers do the same thing? One is silver and the other gold. Thank you.
All right, next up, Steve Deutsch. No, yes, yes, Stephen, you're next on the list.
Mute. I did. Look at that. Okay, my book is Brooklyn. Clever title. It won the Sinclair Poetry Prize with Evening Street Press. So I'm pretty pleased with that. I was born and raised in Brooklyn in the combat zone, known for Mike Tyson. I've been at Penn State now for about 40 years, doing research in mechanical hearts and valves and stuff like that. I began writing poetry seriously about 12 years ago, writing and publishing along. And my poems are not autobiographical, although a lot of people think they might be. I would hope in some sense they are recognizable. The poem I'm reading is a real Brooklyn poem. It's called Going, Going, Gone. Here's a picture of the four of us by the old synagogue on Bristol Street. It's February, and our mothers have dressed us for the Arctic. Can you tell the coats are hand-me-downs? We are 6 or 7 and closer than brothers. To hear us tell it now, we're abandoned and raised by feral beasts on the savage streets of Brooklyn. But it wasn't like that. Sure, we were poor, but who wasn't? That was 1953. We've seen each other through school and war, marriage and divorce, and the promise of infants who grew and grew only to scatter like startled sparrows. But that's not what I want to tell you. Hedy died this year, smoked for 60 years and got hit by a car crossing Gamble Street. In 1961, Hedy hit the longest home run ever in a police athletic league game. We shouted ourselves raw as he loped around the bases, even though we lost that game 12-1 to a team that never had to share gloves. The three of us share old stories over the dominoes and whiskey on a stoop on Bristol Street. The synagogue is long gone. Soon the rich will take the neighborhood. We will pass and all those singular memories will flash out like an ancient TV tube dying, like they never were.
Excellent. Lots of stuff in there that I do identify with, even though I was raised in New Mexico. Next up is Roberta Schultz.
Hi, this is my first full-length collection called Underscore. You may recognize the print on the front of the cover is Klimt. I freaked out when I saw it because I thought, how could this be that Klimt is on the front of my book? The publishers are Madres Press out of Loveland, Ohio. It's a husband and wife team, and the graphic artist is the wife, and she assured me that it's in the public domain now, which I can't even believe, but That's my cover. I called it underscore because I'm a musician, and I thought that underscore is what's played under a film or under a video, and it also means to emphasize. So I thought it would fit nicely with that. Then I found out there are lots of books called that. So it's a good idea to search a title before you choose it. I'm going to read a short poem from it. Most of the book is organized in musical sections. And this is from the section called Solo with Instrument, which is about relationships in my family. And as I told you, I'm from Kentucky, very close to Cincinnati. We're sort of swallowed up by them. And I was born in a little town right across the river from Cincinnati called Newport. November drive-by. On the Day of the Dead, I head back home, drive south on York Street to the train track wall, turn right at the ghosts of pool and schoolyard where my family shotgun house stands guard. There's the street sign we polled May days, climbed July nights, dared December licks. No trees out front nor shack in the back now cradle fledgling broods. New landlords tumble old nests, make grottos where Mother Mary rears stone eyelids, hears rote prayers. Still, our voices clatter around the table, escape like ragged birds, flutter over the transom toward twilight. Thank you.
Done in half the time. We're going to have a lot of time for visiting and sharing more poems when we're finished with this. Next up is Luanne Castle.
There. Hello. I'm here to read from my new chapbook, which just came out this spring. It's called Our Wolves, and it was published by Alien Buddha Press. It's a real departure for me because my previous books tend to be more about family, nature, spirituality, and creativity. And this is about Little Red Riding Hood and the wolf and the grandmother and all the other characters, looking at the age-old story from different perspectives. So the poems are in various styles. And the Perot versions of Little Red Riding Hood, although I used to teach children's literature to future teachers and really got into the tales, the whole history of the tales, and all the different countries that produced versions of, for instance, Little Red Riding Hood or Cinderella or whatever. But for this case, I really focused on those two versions to keep it a little bit easier to deal with. I'm going to read you one of the persona poems. This one is from the perspective of the wolf. You all been waiting for a wolf confession. Am I right? Doesn't everybody love the instant when the bad guy on Perry Mason, sitting in the witness box next to the judge, suddenly rage twists his face and screams, I did it, and I'm not sorry. Well, I didn't kill anybody, not that crabby gran or her fever-cheeked little grandkid. You might say I have a stake in this family too. I can't admit to what I didn't do, even if never mind, it was the hunter was after the girl. I've been looking over that little one for years. Before she could walk, I spooned squash and strained peas into that rosebud, clamped pins in my mouth while I diapered her. When I taught her to swim, she clutched at my fur until she got the hang of floating. I didn't let go of her new bike until she could sail down the sidewalk on her own. I kept my lips smoothed down over my teeth most of the time. She wasn't always good, and to prepare her for the future, I sometimes showed her them all yellow and snaggled. So when she first put on that sexy red and sashayed on down the path, I acted crazy so her mama would warn her. That woman is such a narcissist. Did she do it? And did the girl listen to her if she did? Because I knew I was the only one I could count on, I followed her to Granny, hiding behind garbage cans and cars along the way. That's when I saw him and the way he long looked at her while sharpening his knife on the thick leather strap of his kill bag. I took the precautions of locking Granny in her closet, and when the girl got there, put her in with the old lady, then waited for the hunter to show up with his knife and leering face. But it didn't go well for me. The hunter is an experienced killer, and he slashed me into squirrel pelts. He lied with all the candy in his pocket, but while the girl told her truth, the law agreed that the hunter rescued the women from my innards, setting back feminism a few more centuries, when really that girl was prepared, what with the swimming and biking and dealing with me all those years.
I absolutely love that. Next on the list is Neil Creighton, and I guess that means I'll be back again. I'm going to, excuse me, share a screen so you can see the cover of his book, which is marvelous. Okay, if you can all see that. I had to learn some things about this. The title of the book, this is pronounced Colquhoun. It's a Scottish clan name. And Neil, like I, shakes his head about name pronunciations from the British Isles. Neil's book is available. I have a copy of it in my hands from which I am reading. It's a marvelous journey in poetry. And he asked me if I would read from it, Voices from the Cliffs, because that poem introduces much of what comes after in the book. It's towards the beginning. So I'm sorry I cannot do an Australian accent. I can't even do Foster's. It's Australian for beer, mate, in the right accent. My daughter laughs at me. So you get my accent, Neil's excellent poetry. He sailed near an island where sheer cliffs descended to greet a surging swell crashing against stone in ceaseless foam-filled turbulence. Above the rolling thud of waves and roar of spreading spray, he heard female voices singing, bidding him come near and listen. What use to close his ears? With one hand he held the rudder, with the other a sail rope. And as he fought to clear the cliffs, voices in succession sung. A strand of glossy hair, fine like silk and waved in joy, hung free from the front of my scarf. For that they beat me with a rod of cane and relished in their work. I had a child out of wedlock. My lying lover disappeared. My villagers buried me up to my neck. The stones were piled high, and many hands reached down. I was denied a voice. Silence, men decreed, was my role. An ecstasy of words swirled in my brain. Vanity, they said, you are vanity. Bow in silence before the will of God. Then a fourth, a fifth, a sixth spoke, and innumerable voices cried out, stories of abuse and oppression, until the cliffs echoed with voices, each with a horror tale to tell. Colquhoun wept and shouted to the sea and stone. I know these stories are true, but tell me what to do. What to do? What to do? Then a surging swell lifted his boat far from cliff and crashing wave. He sailed then in calmer water, but his heart beat hard, and tears streaked his face, because the voices he had heard now lodged deep within his heart. And I will tell you, having worked with Neil as one of the contributing editors to Verse Virtual, and having read several of his other poetry books, he does not shy away from difficult topics, not at all. And this entire book is just an absolute delight in terms of poetic enjoyment. And I will find and post a link for that as well. Next on the list is Sterling Warner.
Okay, my most recent work that's going to debut, I guess in the first or second week of July, is called Halcyon Days, Collected Fibonacci. And I guess I never wrote Fibonacci till I retired in 2017, but it's I think most of you probably know it's a poetic form that is based on the structure of the Fibonacci sequence, which is a mathematical sequence where every figure, syllable in this case, is the sum of the two preceding it, and then you can mix it around and so on and so forth. So anyway, I thought it was interesting after all my years of teaching formal poetry, modern poetry. I come across a new form, and I'm surprised I've written so many, over 100 and some poems using this format, which is thus my collection. You can see the tentative cover behind me. That probably won't be the finished copy. Anna Bay's books can't seem to make up its mind. And I think you're very lucky that you got a lot of input into your cover. Somebody was mentioning that earlier, because I know that they're not really interested in what I have to say. Okay, I'm going to be using this share screen just so you can see the structure. Overwintering. Not far from the Sardine Saloon in Pacific Grove, regal monarch butterflies seek sure sanctuary, cluster on cypress, pine, and fir trees, blanket lean-tos and chicken wire fences, gather on fall equinox, absorb the menthol fragrance of eucalyptus leaves. The dense kaleidoscope roosts cover most surfaces like orange and black quilts. Wings move like blacksmith billows, breathing life into their right as they wait out the winter in a Goldilocks sanctuary. Microclimate, not too hot, not too cold, not too hot, where temperature's just right. Hey,
Interesting. I've never touched that form. Something else to do in my spare time. Next up, Margaret. You do have to unmute.
Jó napot kívánok, or good day to everybody in Hungarian. I have a new book coming out any day, which is called I Come from Immigrants, and it's being published by Kelsay Press. It will be available on Amazon from Kelsay and from me if you want an autographed copy. And I put my email into the chat in case anyone would like to do that. And I'd like to read you the first poem, which gave me my title. Oh, and on the front, we will see okay, there we go. A morning portrait of my grandmother in Hungary, where it was the custom to take a picture of the person in the coffin with her relatives and friends behind her. And I can thank my fine art photographer son for that one. I come from immigrants. I come from Hungarians who left almost everything behind to ensure their children had chances they only dreamt of as they boarded immigrant ships from Bremen to New York. I come from a blizzard the night I was born in the city, as my mother pushed and my father prayed in the chapel because a young doctor warned him we might not survive. I come from white leather shoes, bronze from eternity, on a base that would eventually hold my wedding photo, but first held the portrait of a Hungarian-American family. I come from riding my tricycle in circles as my mother churned butter, sang Hungarian ditties, and gathered eggs to trade for necessities in the general store during the war. I come from a home where only Hungarian was spoken until I was 5, when English was needed for school and cousins were no longer the only friends I understood. I come from Shirley Temple curls made with strips of rags, then unwound and brushed into ringlets on my mother's finger and held in place with huge bows on clips in my dark brown hair. I come from dancing the czardas with my father, feet flying at Hungarian weddings, or racing my father in the ocean, my mother watching from shore, ready to call a lifeguard. I come from picnics where men twirled slabs of bacon on sticks over fires, dripping grease onto thick bread covered with pieces of tomatoes, onions, and green peppers, topped with chunks of bacon. I come from a house with white siding, filled with the fragrant odors of my mother's cooking, hiding me stomping barefoot on ferment grapes, which my father turned into Turkachi wine, as his family did in Hungary. I come from numerous moves to improve our circumstances, but angels always followed us and trimmed our tree on Christmas Eve with ornaments and sweets, and then lit the candles on the branches. I come from immigrant parents who found the courage to leave Hungary and generations of ancestors all the way back to the African Exodus, all of whom travel with me still as I dance the czardas, feet flying with joy. Thank you.
We'll be looking for that.
Thank you very much. It's the story of my parents, the people they left behind, my childhood, and a little bit about my husband and I after we meet.
All right. Next up is Pal Valdata.
Hi, everyone.
Sorry.
That's okay. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me here today. I'm so excited to show you my book, Where No Man Can Touch. I just got this on Wednesday, so it literally has just come out, and the launch is going to be Saturday at the Greyhound Bookstore in Berlin, Maryland. If any of you can make it, it would be wonderful to see you there. This is a revised edition of the book that won the Donald Justice Prize in 2015, and it went out of print for several years, and I found a publisher who was really excited to take it on. So I'm really grateful to Wind Canyon Books out in California. They actually published my first novel, and they're doing this again, which makes me so happy. It's all about women aviation pioneers. These are all persona poems, all written in what I'd like to think would be their voices, and all celebrating one of their accomplishments. So I'm going to read you the newest poem in the book, the newest one of the new poems in here, which I found out about only a couple weeks before it was going to go to press, that we had a factual error because some new information has come to light. And so I'm happy to say I managed to get this poem done, and I'm really pleased that I can read this to you. So it's about a woman named Rose Isabel Hawkins Spencer. She was the first woman to solo a powered aircraft. She flew a Zeppelin built by her husband on the 15th of July, 1902, very long time ago. And they had a sponsor, a baby food company named Mellon's. And so they had the name painted on the side of the Zeppelin, and that's what she was flying. And all these poems are in form. So this is called Airship. Without a qualm, I stepped inside the frame beneath the gas-filled bag with Mellon's name. I hoped our sponsors, who made food for infants, were pleased to have a mama fly this instance. A bit of coaching left me sure of my control. A proper wife, I rather knew my role. The airship lofted like a bumblebee. No husband at the helm, only me. For 30 minutes, I kept Mellon's ad aloft, returning to applause. Some hats were doffed. And that was that. No hoopla, no brass band. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle shook my hand. Thank you.
That's wonderful. Next up is Hedy.
I'm delighted to be here, and I'm gonna be talking about my third collection, my latest. It's The Taste of the Earth, and it won the Eric Hoffer Award and the Silver Nautilus Award. And I want to talk about the cover because it is my painting. I painted the Eye of Horus. Because for ancient Egyptians, the Eye of Horus was a powerful amulet that symbolizes 6 senses. They considered there were 6 senses, not only 5. And there's a very long section in my book titled Meditations over the Eye of Horus, in which I have a series of haibons. So the book is a memoir in poems, and it weaves together my personal history with the complex cultural history of Egypt and Lebanon, my countries of origin. And I do also include the civil war in Lebanon and the Arab Spring, the aftermath of violence in the area. So the book has 5 sections. There is a meditation over Phoenician letters that is an abecedarian, and many persona poems, pantoums. What I'd like to read today is one of the many poems inspired by inanimate objects or trees or parts of nature. And the poem I'll read is the very last one in the collection. It's a persona poem from the perspective of an abandoned fountain. The abandoned fountain. I wasn't always covered with dust and fallen leaves. Water's cooling ferns once ran over my marbled veins, opening up and closing like fans. I knew the language of each ripple, and secrets rippled through my heart. Sighs of joy or pain filled my dreams until the day I woke up in the midst of rubbles. In the deserted courtyard, children came to wash their naked souls, bleeding from cracks like hardened cement. But I was too dry to soothe their wounds. No one cleans my mosaic tiles any longer. No one rubs my copper faucets. No one sits on the smooth edges that were my pride. At dusk, shadows without a head chase limbs searching for blind shadows. I hear voices fracture like shattered mirrors, each searching for an ear, unable to find a match. Lost cries soar in dissonance, rise in volutes of pain, circle around broken bricks and stones, disappear through holes and crevices. I know a river of voices runs down the streets, surrounded with indifference, endlessly swelling, sending ashen messengers to the wind. Thank you.
And thank you. Make sure you give us a link to purchase your book
Sure.
in the chat. And that wraps up the list of readers that we had signed up to present a book and share a poem. We only have one audience member today. So glad you came, Victoria. Would you like to present your book again and read from it?
Oh, okay, sure. This is my book, Glimpse. The cover of it is one of my colored pencil drawings. And it's up from Kelsay Books publishers. And they were fabulous about, I had no problem. I said, here's the cover I'd like to use. It's one of my drawings. I can give you as many more as you want. And they said, no problem, we'll take that one. And they were terrific. Okay. Let me see. I'm gonna read something for the poets. How's that? This is called You Have Never Been Alone. There is so much that waits, much that is known behind the secret curtain of dawn. You must be silent, an early riser, a receiver of bird song before you can see through the dark and realize you have never been alone. Before you can know, there has always been a murmuring of letters beneath your skin, nudging, whispering. You must look closely through your own noise and you will see they have always been with you. They are tattooed inside your thighs, on the soles of your feet. When you brush the hair from your forehead, you might see them on the palm of your hand. They spill out into the air when you breathe, leak out from time to time from the ends of your fingers, form words, sounds, and colors, find their way to virgin paper or canvas, speak out through piano keys or guitar strings, bring sweetness and spice to your cooking, your lovemaking. The letters, the words are outside of time and cannot leave you. One day they shall rise up with you. Letters and ashes will ascend together, imprisoned songbirds set free from the cage of gravity and skin. The curtain shall part and let go its mystery. You will be gold and orange wildfire as you rise up over the horizon, round and glorious, flooding the sky with your light. Thank you.
Okay, that ends the formal, if there is such a formal, of our book party. I'm going to stop the recording, but I'm not going to stop the party.